Thank you very much, Jim. You know, you could have saved us all a lot of time by just introducing me as the greatest man who ever lived. Such a pleasure to be here. Jim Rapley is our fourth president of the ACFE. Our first, Jim mentioned, Dr. Steve Albrecht. He's currently in Japan and couldn't make it to Washington. But the second president and the third, Dr. Gil Geis and Mr. Toby J.F. Bishop, are here today. And they're right out there, and I'd like them to stand and let's give them a round of applause. Can you do that? On a personal note, my niece Patty is also here, and so is the light of my life, my wife Judy, who stood by me for 30 years, and I could not have done this job without Judy. I love you. The Association of Certified Fraud Examiners is now 22 years old. For the first 15 years, I was the CEO. Gradually, and on purpose, I've reduced my role over the years. For those of you who just might care, I am now 66. So I guess that gives me the right this morning and any time during this conference to say pretty well whatever the hell I want. There's got to be some advantage of old age. In the early days of the ACFE, because I had such a prominent place in the organization, I was often asked how the ACFE could survive without me. Well, not only can it live on, but it does. For the evidence, just look around you. Even in a dismal economy, your organization has never been strong. Never. And that's not because of me. It's because of you and your commitment and the tireless work of our staff, including Scott Grossfeld, who manages our fiscal affairs and is our chief executive officer. As Jim told you, there were naysayers when we started the ACFE. Some people were even suspicious. That's a good thing, because if we cannot withstand the harsh light of public scrutiny, we don't deserve to be here. So not too long after we began, some guy, who I'll call Roger, said that we would never make it because we're just a bunch of cowboys from Texas. Well, Roger, we've got 3 words for you. Yippee-ki-yay. Every time I'm with you, I've been asked to repeat the story about the way the ACFE came into existence. If you've been to an annual conference, you've heard the story before, and Jim has told you part of it. Here's the rest of the tale. After serving a 2-year sentence in public accounting, I became an FBI agent for nearly a decade, specializing in the investigation of fraud. Had you asked me then why white-collar criminals do what they do, my answer would have been very simple: because they're crooks. But then I met a man who showed me that it really wasn't that simple. His name was Dr. Donald R. Cressy, and at the time, he was one of the world's leading criminologists. Don taught, and I listened, and I learned a great deal. It was he that gave me the idea for the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. It occurred in one of our many casual conversations. Dr. Cressy pointed out to me that with the increase in fraud, neither the accounting profession nor law enforcement was solely equipped to deal with the problem. He suggested that we needed a new kind of corporate cop, one that both had investigative and accounting skills. The reality is that what he didn't say, or what he said to me, really didn't sink in at the time. It occurred to me in a dream after his death in 1987, and that dream was the ACFE. The rest, as they say, is history. Now that I no longer run the ACFE, it's given me the luxury of nurturing pet projects. There currently are 3 of them. First is our higher education initiative. 7 years ago, there were exactly 19 colleges in the United States that offered anti-fraud classes for their students. There are now nearly 400, and that number grows. And that's because the ACFE has a policy of giving away educational resources with no strings attached to any institution of higher learning that will agree to offer fraud examination education. We donated millions of dollars in resources toward this worthy goal and will continue to do so, because today's students are tomorrow's fraud examiners. The second project is the Law Enforcement Partnership. Federal, state, local, and international law enforcement agencies are critical to the mission of the ACFE and to you, the member. 5 years ago, we started the Law Enforcement Partnership for 2 reasons: to involve them as members of the ACFE, but as importantly, to recognize the CFE credential for hiring and promotional purposes by these law enforcement agencies. This gives our members, you, a leg up in a competitive job market. I'm now proud to announce that currently there are 24 participating agencies, and the partnership continues to grow, especially with non-U.S. agencies. The third project to which I have devoted my energies is the Institute for Fraud Prevention, the IFP. It's a nonprofit think tank started by the American Institute of CPAs and the ACFE. The IFP's simple purpose is to raise money for research into what causes fraud. Our partners are financial, academic, and intellectual. The financial contributors include the ACFE, the AICPA, the accounting firms of Grant Thornton and Deloitte, and one of the world's largest banks, BNP Paribas. Intellectual partners are the Better Business Bureau, the National White Collar Crime Center, and several agencies, among them the FBI and the Government Accountability Offices. Our academic partners include about 50 universities worldwide. The IFP has a long way to go, but we've made tremendous strides already. Like many of you, my work these days can largely be done anywhere where there's a telephone and a computer. My wife Judy and I live in a small town of 15 acres that's about 2 hours from ACFE headquarters in Austin. I go to headquarters about once a month, mostly so people don't forget who I am. But my wife is convinced that I still work too hard, and she suggested that I get a hobby. What would you really like to do that doesn't involve fraud, she asked. Well, I pondered that a bit, and I said, well, I'd either like to have a small stable of animals on our acreage here, or I'd like to take over the world. That may explain why I now have a dog, 2 horses, and 3 donkeys. After 2 million frequent flyer miles, I rarely go anywhere except to see you. But as long as I'm physically and mentally capable, I'll be back every year. Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen, the torch has passed, but it still burns brightly. Thanks to all of you. I am truly honored to be among you. Long live the ACFE.